That. Okay, can you see my screen?
I can.
All right, we are going to talk about scaling frameworks. So let me get this to presentation mode.
Because scaling is quite big at the moment, isn't it?
I've heard that. I'm not really sure. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to talk, we're going to play some videos. We're going to talk about the different frameworks. And it's not just Scott and I are going to talk. You're going to talk as well. So we're going to share our different views and thoughts and experiences as we go through it. And then at the end, we're going to make some recommendation and give you some final thoughts.
Yeah, I found this. This is one of these talks and tasks that you put together to do, and it's quite interesting because you think you know some of this stuff, and then you go out to the materials, and then you go, "Wow, I didn't know that they've added that new," or "I didn't know that there was, there was less material." So let's just cover the background. Actually, most agile, okay, let's go back. 20 years ago, some people left the room. They all left the room. They agreed on the values, they agreed on the principles, and the third thing they agreed was never to have to agree on anything else again. And they all went off with different ideas. So some went off to do XP, some went off to do DSDM, some went off to do various other things, and we explored a lot of that in February. But what came down was, some nice little patterns that worked at team level. And then afterwards, when Agile started getting adopted into the larger and larger organizations, there was a question about how we bring these things up, how can we work with these in a bigger context, and then a few scaling methodologies appeared, and that's largely the work of Agilists going off, trying things, and coming up with their own methods. This evolutionary method was always going to come up with different, with different frameworks. All of these can really go back to some similar patterns, and we'll talk about that at the end. But basically, different things have done different things with scaling. I don't think there's any definitive answer with scaling, and we'll explore that. But that's it. We've ended up with these islands of little ideas. So let's do a tour of the islands. Okay, so what's Agile at scale? Well, Agile at scale implies Agile principles and practices from the team level out to other teams, up the entire organization. Scaling extends Agile horizontally, but also vertically through the enterprise. Not all the practices scale to large groups. Another challenge is maintaining alignment. There's often the culture challenge, and changes to corporate finance and governance need to be there and made. If anyone's touched on the beyond budgeting or some of the the agile governance things, almost like how large companies operate, they've got this there's got this exoskeleton at the moment which is holding everything in place. It's going to stop things growing. We really need to look at the whole piece, and all of these things tend to fall into the space of Agile at scale. So when we went to start this, Pat and I were talking, and did I call you or did you call me? I can't remember, Pat.
I think you called me.
Yeah, and I said, wouldn't it be good to go out there and try and disambiguate some of the differences, similarities between the different methods? I know what it was. I was doing one of the facilitators guild, and they asked the difference between safe and I think it was the difference between safe and disciplined agile. And I said, well, let's go to the latest world results and let's look at who's using what by market share from digital AI. And this graph came up, so it was in my head. I think I've probably lost track of a few of the things. So disciplined agile, I was quite into 7 years ago. So I was, when I came back to look at it, I was kind of surprised to where that went to. I'd always wanted to get into enterprise Scrum, and even more so when I did the the reflection on Mike Beadle's life last year. And Nexus, I've been involved in with people that regularly use Nexus in places like Microsoft. But when I started talking to Pat also knew probably a little bit more about APM and less than I did. So it's interesting that as we started talking, there was a big gaps in our knowledge. So it seemed ideal to come do a bit of research and then come back to the group and have a chat. also learn off and get a little bit of interaction here. In the chat, and this would be really helpful, could you put any of these that you've used? And by used, I mean kind of lightly used. Yeah. So you don't, and I'm not classing as certified or that. So has any one of you used Scrum at Scale, SAFe, Enterprise Scrum, Spot, and put what it is? APM less Nexus.
You're not allowed to enter I don't know, which I find fascinating that the second largest framework being used is I don't know.
Yeah, whilst we're getting that, there is a lot of SAFe there. As we'll look at this as well, the two columns are the darker blue is the year before.
2 years before, 2019.
Correct. Thanks, Pat. And the lighter blue is where things are at just now. Excellent. Enterprise Scrum. This is good because I would like a little bit more in that. Good. Okay, so we've got some people in the room that know a little bit about this as well. Yeah. So let's get on with the chat. This is informal. If you want to say something, yeah, you don't have to put your hand up. Just come onto the mic and say something. Okay.
So when you say chat, you mean we just say anything?
Yeah.
Well, not anything. I mean, like obviously, Scale framework related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, well, my own personal opinion. This is my personal opinion: is that some of these things are just like whatever agile approach you take for small teams as well. You know, there are problems when you move up in size, but your organizational context, you know, to some extent predetermines what you do.
Well, it depends. You can go like this and move, or I go back small.
Alberto, are you talking?
Maybe I can move this one. Maybe. They go, no problem.
Okay, I think Alberto's having a local conversation. Anyone want to build on you know what Louise was saying? And anyone got any comments on the stats that came out of the latest survey?
Well, say for really happy. Sorry.
Very short comment. There's a couple frameworks that were present the past years that are not present anymore, like BJSS and stuff. And I asked the guys, and they said they don't do that large scale stuff anymore, not in that sense. And if you check the ones from previous years, you will see that some are not even among the options anymore. And Spotify is a special one because it's not really a scaling framework; it's an organizational model at scale that was present in some pockets at Spotify, in many, they say, not a standard per se, and not for scaling agile per se, just the organizational part of it. So it doesn't have any body or framework or spec behind it. It's basically one
more
figure.
like a scaling collaboration model.
Discussion, consensus, alignment.
Good. We're going to explore some of this stuff. As we were doing a bit of research, and one of the things I want to do is use some videos from the content people. There was a wonderful less video about less at Spotify, which I'm not even sure what model that would be. Okay, so for those of you who've never heard of SAFe, we're just going to go through in order, right? This is the SAFe video from the SAFe website, and we can all have a comment on it after. The style of the talks is Cisco and Ebert. I'm not sure which one of us is Cisco and Ebert from
Ebert.
SAFe provides the operating system for organizations to achieve business agility through the 7 core competencies of the lean enterprise: team and technical agility, agile product delivery, enterprise solution delivery, lean portfolio management, organizational agility, continuous learning culture, and lean agile leadership. It all starts with team and technical agility, and specifically with the Agile team. An Agile team is a group of 5 to 11 members which can define, build, test, and where applicable, deploy value in short time boxes called iterations. The team uses agile methods like Scrum or Kanban, or a combination thereof. The team starts each iteration by planning what they can deliver in an iteration planning event. The product owner provides guidance on what needs to be built by representing the customer on the team. Every day, the team meets to discuss how they're progressing toward their iteration goals in a daily stand-up. At the end of each iteration, the team demonstrates the work they've completed in an iteration review. Before the next iteration, the team reflects on what to improve for the next iteration in an iteration retrospective. The Scrum Master is the coach of the team, helping it improve and facilitating the various events. In an enterprise, multiple teams need to work together as a team of agile teams to deliver value. In SAFe, these teams of agile teams are called an Agile Release Train, or ART, and include 50 to 125 people. ARTs are cross-functional, including all the people needed to explore customer needs and then build and deliver solutions to customers. The ART uses agile product delivery practices to deliver the right value at the right time. The ART works within a time box called a program increment, or PI, which is typically 5 iterations long. The ART follows similar events to teams. At the beginning of the PI, all teams come together to plan their work for the PI in a PI planning event. PI planning is facilitated by the release train engineer, who serves as the coach for the ART. Product management provides the vision and backlog. The system architect provides architectural guidance. The teams then plan the work for the PI, identifying what can be delivered. A program board is used to visualize the dependencies between the teams. Every iteration, the ART demos the integrated solution across all teams in a system demo. And at the end of the PI, all teams meet to retrospect on how to improve in an inspect and adapt event. Product managers use customer centricity and design thinking to understand customer problems and discover solutions that are desirable, viable, feasible, and sustainable. The ART builds a continuous delivery pipeline and uses DevOps practices to release on demand, delivering value when it is needed. Sometimes a single agile release train is not enough to deliver a solution, and the enterprise solution delivery competency is needed. A solution train is used to coordinate multiple ARTs and suppliers to deliver large, complex solutions. Solution management has content authority on what gets built. The solution architect oversees the architecture across ARTs, and a solution train engineer coaches and facilitates solution train events. In order to align strategy and execution, Lean Portfolio Management provides a way to create strategic themes and a portfolio vision to align solution development with enterprise strategy. Lean Portfolio Management helps enterprises organize around the delivery of value in value streams, as well as fund these value streams to avoid the problems that are typically associated with project cost accounting. Having strategy, however, is not enough. Organizational agility provides the tools that help portfolios achieve strategy agility and change direction quickly when needed, organizing and reorganizing around value. It builds the environment for flow of value across the entire enterprise and beyond solution development, and helps grow lean thinking people and agile teams. Continuous learning culture drives a culture of innovation and relentless improvement to help enterprises become learning organizations. Finally, a lean enterprise is built on lean agile leadership. To achieve and sustain business agility, leaders must embody, teach, and exhibit the mindsets, values, and principles that are the basis of lean and agile. Lead by example and guide everyone toward this new way of working using the implementation roadmap as a guide. Together, these 7 competencies build the lean enterprise and make true business agility possible.
Okay, I'll start the debate on that. First of all, wow. Someone put that's like buzzword bingo. There's a lot in that video. I think We wanted to get little snippets of videos. Obviously, there's a lot in Safe. I think that does it quite well of overviewing it. But I did feel a bit like the character in Clockwork Orange when he was made to watch the video. There was just an awful lot of images coming at me there quickly. What did you think, Pat?
Yeah, the quality of the marketing department. You're going to see on some of these are really good. A couple things. One thing I really like about Safe, or I should say a feature of Safe, is that it's prescriptive, meaning it gives you a lot of patterns. And I know a lot of pure Agilists will say, oh God, it's prescriptive. And that's a bad thing. My experience with big companies is that's a good thing, because in the big companies, they don't always know how to act. They don't know. They say, okay, I need to change, but how do I change? And it gives them patterns and ideas of how to change. The downside is there is a lot of vocabulary when it comes to Safe. There's a lot of words you have to learn, and it's confusing. And they change some of the words from pure Agile to fit their vocabulary. So it is a challenge in terms of your vocabulary.
Yeah, I've noticed that when some people, if I'm coaching some Scrum Masters, they'll say this means this in Scrum, but Safe says something else. So it's the same pattern. Yeah, we're just taking it and we've renamed it or recalled it. I think some of the things that bothered me about this is the product owner, the product owner and product management. So the product owners really are delivering something in the team. Product management are actually doing the planning and the interaction and the external bits and pieces. And I like to come from a bit more of a devolved world where maybe the teams can have a bit more interaction with your customers and product development. So that always gives me a bit of a heart attack. The other thing that gives me indigestion is the Agile release train, because people see that and think they're delivering every 90 days. Now I know there's a lot of material in it, so you can release when you want. But I think just calling it a release train always give everyone the sense that everyone was trying to get something over the line in 90 days. What do you think to that? I mean,
I think they're all valid. One of the things I do like about Safe though is they do have great training material as well. They got a lot of classes and a lot of good classes.
Sure. Right. Let's open it up. We've done our Cisco eBert bit. What does the audience think?
I think being prescriptive has pros and cons, of course. Like Safe can be as agile as some large enterprises can go if you apply it correctly. But then if you go strictly by the book, then there's another the big danger in killing creativity in certain things. Like we should do it like this and not differently. And on the other hand, it can be a pitfall as well that you just change a few names and you don't really change your organization. We change departments into trains and we're done. And we make our team lead Scrum Masters. That's not the way it should be, of course. But that's, I'm afraid, how it often happens.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just because you pay for the framework and you change a few titles does not mean you're going to change your organization.
Yeah, but that's about people. That's about people and how they apply things.
Mhm.
So, you have to do some work on the people as well. You can't just give them a framework and say, go to it. There's other stuff that needs to go along with that.
But that's exactly why it's so popular nowadays.
Well, they do the same thing where they change the business analyst title to product owner, but the role isn't the same.
No, it's not. No.
And then they don't give them enough training on Safe itself. So after a while, the development team will try to dictate the user stories to the product owner without any knowledge. They'll just say, well, this is what we're going to give you. Just like it.
Yeah.
Or don't. But this is what you're getting. And that's a lack of training and support.
Yeah, I think you're right. So a lot of the complaints people will have with Safe, because it's very popular right now, is not necessarily Safe. It's how you go about implementing Safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll see that, and I think we'll probably see that in any and all the frameworks.
Yeah,
well, I think there's something about Safe and its training and certification process
that lends itself to people that don't have a lot of experience in software engineering, taking a framework and applying it with a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think that SAFe itself, as a certifying authority, has some responsibility in that.
Well, yeah, I think Paul is right. I think Patrick is right in terms of any methodology can be failed. But I think even if you implement SAFe perfectly, you're signing yourself up for, whatever, 56 more meetings every month. And I think the reason it's so popular is in large organizations, it gives things to do to middle management. And so middle management loves it. It's like all of a sudden they have, PI planning and arts and program vision, program Kanban boards. They can spend twice as much time in Jira. I just think it is just really, they've done an incredible job selling at the top level because of their marketing, and middle management loves it. And even in the best, purest implementation, it is signing yourself up for a lot of meetings.
But not all middle management
cool.
like it.
Sorry, Louise?
Not all middle management like it. Some middle, this is why it depends what your starting point is and what your culture is like. And and Patrick's absolutely right. You can go off the rails with anything. So and that's why people, when you're educating people, you really need to ensure that they understand the point of it all, which is to ultimately make happy customers.
Cool.
All right, I'm loving this discussion, and we got 6 more videos to get through.
Right, come on.
And
time boxes, Patrick.
yeah, I'm thinking let's time box, because I think as we go through these, we're going to be comparing them. So that's our first one.
A little bit, yeah.
So we'll be comparing. We've got some other videos here we can compare as we go through. All right. Next one is Scrum of Scrums. Let me play this off.
So first things first, don't scale if you don't need to scale. So why? Why would you want to scale Scrum? Well, this is Cecilia. She's a product owner and she's responsible for maximizing the value of the product. She has just one team working on her one product. There are also other teams in the organization, many in fact, and they each work on their own product backlog and maximize the values of their product. It can take Cecilia's one team 6 whole sprints to deliver the stuff she needs. But 6 sprints is too long. We can't wait 12 weeks. If we do, she won't be able to launch her product in time and a competitor could win over the market. The cost of waiting 12 weeks is just too great. If she had 3 teams working on one product, it could take her just 4 weeks to deliver it. In a single organization, all products are not created equal. So having a single backlog where the whole organization can focus on the most important things is pretty paramount these days. Let's look at another example. A company wants to implement new systems or completely refactor legacy systems. This could take months or even years to do, and it needs multiple teams from multiple departments across the entire organization to coordinate its efforts. It's not easy though. It's been found that as the number of Scrum teams within an organization grows, the output and working product and the velocity of those teams begin to fall. Because there's many issues like cross-team dependencies and even duplication of work. It became pretty obvious that a framework for effectively coordinating those teams was needed in order to achieve that linear scalability that we strive for. Scrum at Scale is designed to accomplish this goal via its scale-free architecture. Scrum at Scale simplifies scaling by using Scrum to scale Scrum. In Scrum at Scale, we separate the accountability of the what with the how. These 2 cycles consist of various components, which together produce a powerful framework for coordinating the efforts of multiple teams along a single path. The components actually allow an organization to customize their whole transformation strategy and implementation of this. A great starting point is to implement a scalable reference model for a small set of teams that does Scrum well. As this reference model of teams accelerates, the impediments and bottlenecks that delay the delivery, produce waste, or impede the whole business agility become very apparent. And the most effective way to eliminate these problems is to spread Scrum across the entire organization so that the whole value stream is optimized. Let's start with the team level process. This is as per the Scrum Guide, with the 3 artifacts, the 5 events, and the 3 roles. The goals of the team level process are to maximize the flow of completed and quality work, increase the performance of the team over time, and operate in a way that's sustainable and enriching for the team, as well as accelerate the customer feedback loop. When a set of teams need to coordinate with each other, they create a Scrum of Scrum. This is in itself a Scrum team, which is responsible for a fully integrated set of potentially shippable increments of product at the end of every sprint from all of the participating teams. As a Scrum of Scrum functions as a release team, they must be able to directly deliver the value to the customers. The Scrum Masters of all the participating teams need to be on the Scrum of Scrums because they need to be responsive in real time to the impediments that are raised by their participating teams. The Scrum Master of the Scrum of Scrums is called the Scrum of Scrum Masters. And it also requires product owner representation to resolve any prioritization issues. A Scrum of Scrum backlog refinement event is held to decide what impediments are ready to be removed, how best to remove them, and how the team will know when it's done. A Scrum of Scrum retrospective is when the team representatives share any learnings or process improvements that their individual teams have succeeded with so that they can standardize those practices across all the teams. The Scaled Daily Scrum mirrors the daily Scrums in that it optimizes the collaboration and performance of the network of teams. Depending on the size of the organization or the implementation, more than one Scrum of Scrums may be needed to deliver a very complicated product. In those cases, a Scrum of Scrums can be created out of multiple Scrum of Scrums. The Scrum of Scrums is an organic pattern of Scrum teams, which is infinitely scalable. Each Scrum of Scrums should have a Scrum of Scrum Masters and a scale version of each artifact and event. Scaling the Scrum of Scrums reduces the number of communication pathways within the organization so that complexity is encapsulated. The Scrum of Scrums interfaces with the Scrum of Scrums in the exact same manner that a Scrum of Scrums interfaces with a single Scrum team, which allows for that linear scalability. The Scrum of Scrums for an entire organization is called the EAT, the Executive Action Team. It owns the Agile ecosystem, implements the Scrum values, and ensures that the Scrum roles are created and supported. The EAT is the final stop for the impediments. It pretty much destroys any impediments that come their way, and therefore it needs to be comprised of individuals who are empowered politically, financially to remove them. The function of the EAT is to coordinate multiple Scrum of Scrums or Scrum of Scrums. The EAT is responsible for implementing this agile operating system by establishing, maintaining, and enhancing the implementation within the organization. The EAT's role is to create an organizational transformation backlog, a prioritized list of agile initiatives that need to be accomplished, and ensure that it's carried out. The EAT also ensures that a product owner organization is created and funded, and that this organization is represented on the EAT. The EAT is also responsible for measuring and improving the quality of Scrum within the organization. The goals of continuous improvement and impediment removal are to identify impediments and reframe them as opportunities, maintain a healthy and structured environment for prioritizing and removing impediments, and then verifying the resulting improvements, ensuring visibility in the organization to effect change. The goals of cross-team coordination are to coordinate similar processes across multiple related teams, mitigate cross-team dependencies, to ensure that they don't become impediments, and to maintain alignment of team norms and guidelines for consistent output. Because the goal of the Scrum of Scrums is to function as a release team, the deployment of product falls under their scope, while what is contained in any release falls under the scope of the product owners. Therefore, the goals of the deployment are to deliver a consistent flow of valuable finished product to customers, to integrate the work of different teams into one seamless product, and ensure high quality of the customer experience. Next, we move on to the product owner cycle, coordinating the what. A group of product owners who need to coordinate a shared backlog that feeds a network of teams are called a product owner team. For each Scrum of Scrums, there is an associated product owner team, which aligns a team's priorities along a single path so that they can coordinate their team's backlog and build alignment with the stakeholders to support that backlog. A team's product owner is accountable for the composition and prioritization on the team's backlog and may pull backlog items from the shared Meta Scrum backlog into the team backlog or generate independent backlog items at his or her discretion. The product owner teams hold a scaled version of backlog refinement, the Meta Scrum. Each product owner must attend. The event is the forum for leadership, stakeholders, and all customers to express their preferences. Here, priorities can be negotiated, budgets can be changed, and teams realign to maximize the delivery of value to market. The main functions of the product owner team are to create an overarching vision for the product and make it visible to the organization, build alignment with key stakeholders to secure support for backlog implementation, generate a single prioritized backlog, ensuring that duplication of work is avoided, create a minimally uniform definition of done that applies to all the teams, eliminate dependencies raised by the teams, generate a coordinated roadmap and release plan, and decide upon and monitor metrics that gives insight into the product and market. The product owner teams, just like Scrum of Scrums, function as Scrum teams in their own right. As such, they need to have someone who acts as a Scrum Master and keeps the team on track in discussions. They also need a single person who is responsible for coordinating the generation of a single product backlog for all teams within the Scrum of Scrums. This person is designated as the Chief Product Owner. The Chief Product Owners coordinate priorities among product owners who work with individual teams. They align backlog priorities with stakeholder and customer needs.
Oh, I'm still on mute. Sorry about that. We're gonna stop it there. It's a little bit long.
It's all right. I think we got the idea.
Yeah.
So it's like fractal Scrum.
Thank God. Come on. The comments. All right. So I'll give you what I like and what I don't like about Scrum of Scrums. I love the simplicity of it. I mean, it's, if you build upon Scrum, if you can do Scrum well, you can build upon it and do Scrum of Scrums well, or Scrum at Scale. What I really don't like about it is the overuse of the word Scrum. Everything has Scrum in it. They could get a little better. They could get a little better with their vocabulary. Where Safe has 1,000 different words, they have 3, and 2 of them are Scrum. So they're my thoughts. I don't know what other people think.
I'll tell you what I like. I like the eat, right? I definitely think Safe doesn't have this kind of executive action impediment group. It's almost like a lot of the stuff's pushed down to pushed to the lower levels.
Scrums doesn't use lean, doesn't use value stream, it doesn't use any sexy portfolio, business strategy, execution, lucky winner in the market kind of terminology.
Yeah, but I like the eat term. Yeah, I mean, what's the equivalent of an eat in Scrum and Safe? Is it the LACE? The Lean Agile Center of Excellence. Nobody knows. So what's the EAT equivalent? Where's the decisions made about how we remove barriers?
I think it's the lease.
Well, it's done at the art level and at the EAT.
The Scrum of Scrum on the art level?
Yeah.
I think it would depend who was on it. That's the thing, because sometimes impediments lie outside of the train. So
yeah, they've got the word executive in there, so I think
that's what I like. I like that they call out the executives, because often I see executives tend to be too hands off in their transformations. Now we've given them a hands-on role here. I like that.
Yeah. What does everyone else think? We've got our kind of views on it, and the comments were hilarious. I hadn't seen this video before, so it was the first time I'd seen it. I did wonder if it was a spoof at one point. It would just put a spoof one up by mistake.
So with SAFe, one of the things I don't like about this is, and that I do like about SAFe, is that SAFe addresses value streams right up front.
Yeah.
And portfolios versus it like somehow growing organically, which I've seen fail more than succeed, especially in larger legacy organizations.
Yeah, I think sorry.
Go ahead,
No,
Louise.
I was just I think that's one of the things it's got going for it, because if you've already got a really well established, set of Scrum teams, then this is a way to build on it that they would recognize. Although I do think the marketing does need looking at.
And the other thing I've seen is I don't usually see product owners empowered to really say to the stakeholders, this is our portfolio, or to even work with the stakeholders to get agreement on the priorities. So I think there needs to be something more at a strategic level around goals and alignment.
A product owner in this model is more senior than a product owner in SAFe. This is more analogous. I've always thought even in Scrum, the product owner in Scrum is more like the product manager in SAFe from a seniority or position within the organization.
Yeah.
The product owner in Scrum is indeed he takes vision and strategy work. It will be even the CPO of CPOs according to SAFe, like the real product, not some platform or feature or some component or some part of. You can't have 100 POs. Scrum is just authentic in that regard. To be one's got to be honest.
And anyone not spoken that would like to come in, or has anyone never seen this before and would like to comment on it with fresh eyes?
For me, this is definitely something new. I never seen it before. I heard about Scrum and Scale, but I didn't know it was something like this. Never had the opportunity or the need to dig into what this is about.
Yeah, what do you think about it? What's your gut telling you?
Someone earlier mentioned that the organic thing doesn't work in a larger organization. I guess I can agree with that. That's maybe also why things like less won't land in large corporations like banks and so on.
Oh, hold on, unless we got a whole video on that too.
Right. Okay.
I figured.
Right, let's hit the time box again.
Their main responsibilities are the
All right, so let's move on to our next one. Now we're going to talk about Discipline Agile, and I'll take editorial responsibility to cut these off as we need to.
You might be hearing recently about a new thing called Disciplined Agile. It's a PMI product, and you might be wondering what it is. Now, usually we think that if it is an agile way of working, if it's an agile approach, it might be some framework which helps us in getting things done or getting our delivery happening faster. But incidentally, the Disciplined Agile is not a framework, it's a toolkit. Now you may wonder how it is, because ultimately we need some structure for doing our work. And most of the agile approaches, be it Scrum or Scaled Agile, position themselves as a framework. So what is framework? In a way, framework gives you a structure. You can decorate that structure, add your things in it as and when needed. Some of the frameworks are, I can say, predefined, strong structure given to you, and you have some flexibility, some ideas which you can add to it. Some of the others might be very lightly defined. They might be giving you a kind of a basic skeleton, and then you can decorate and work with it. Now the Disciplined Agile is coming up with an approach that, be it light framework or a heavy framework, it's still a framework which gives you a good starting point, but also limits you from doing something which might be appropriate for you. Because you may have multiple teams, multiple business organizations, and each team, each organization may have different context. And putting them into one structure, a common structure, may not be a wise idea. Their context may be different. Now somebody will say, what is context? So in a generic way, we can understand Some of your development might be happening in a project mode. Some of your development might be happening in a product mode. Some of the development might be involving multiple vendor teams. Some of the development might be happening through geographically distributed team. Now, since there is a variation, they may require different ways of working, and the team should be able to evolve their way of working on their own. So, what is disciplined agile and how they help us in finding out our ways of working? So, in a way, we can say that disciplined agile is giving us the building blocks. There are some large building blocks which helps us in creating the bigger structure, and there are some small building blocks which help us in getting things done on a regular basis. So one of the overall building block is a life cycle. You have to choose a life cycle. Rather than giving you one option, they have multiple life cycle options. So for example, if you are thinking of new product, it's a very vague idea. You want to run a lean startup cycle. That particular initiative may run under exploratory life cycle. You may have another product which might have been in a continuous delivery mode because it is running from last 6 months. It can have a continuous delivery life cycle. You may have some initiative which is well defined now. You understand the customer persona and the business problem you are trying to solve. The requirements are still emerging. You may work on a delivery life cycle for that particular thing. So the disciplined agile gives you multiple choices of life cycle. And I feel this life cycle is like an outer layer which you can choose, and you can change also as you progress from one type of problem to another type of problem in the same product domain. Now once this life cycle thing is settled down, usually we know framework from like roles, ceremonies and artifact. And somebody may wonder, okay, what happens to these three when I'm using disciplined agile? So when it comes to role, they give you primary roles and lot of secondary roles or add-on roles. So the primary roles are something which needs to be there as you get started. A small team, big team, all teams are expected to have those DA primary roles. But as your context emerges, sometimes you need a domain expert, sometimes you need a program manager, sometimes you need a special architecture, a domain expert. So additionally, as your context evolve, you can add these supporting roles. So that's the flexibility, and that's how they put it in a toolkit mode. So finally, talking about events and artifacts. So in DA case, the events and artifacts are also choosable. So what they do is they talk about goal-oriented approach. They have a process goals, and in order to achieve a process goal, you can do various things. For example, you have a process goal of coordinating activities among the development team among the team members. Now you can achieve this process goal by way of doing, say, daily Scrum kind of a thing, daily inspect and adapt meeting. You can also achieve this process goal of coordination work among different team members by way of having some electronic chat channel and some tools which helps you to collaborate. So the idea here is not to do a 15 minutes meeting or not to use a particular chat tool, but to have a common understanding related to your work and your activities. So you have a goal, and these process goals are defined in the DA toolkit, and each process goal has multiple decision points, and there are various options and various considerations are documented in disciplined agile, which helps us as a team member, as a coach, to find out which way of coordinating will be suitable for me, because the context varies. One team could be geographically distributed, another team could be co-located. So we need to have different ways of working for those two. So the artifacts and events are also, I think, selectable. That would be a good word to say. You can decide based on your context. So you have a life cycle which gives you the upper framework, you have a roles which are primary and secondary, and you have a goal-oriented approach will let you identify what kind of events, what kind of artifacts might be useful for you in order to do your development job. If you want to know more about disciplined agile.
All right, so that one was a little more, not quite as long, but what did you think of that one, Scott? What are your thoughts on disciplined agile? I'm not on mute anymore, am I?
You aren't.
I am.
Oh,
sorry about that.
Well, yeah. One of us was.
Yeah, I did a lot of reading and a lot of, just study when I was selecting systems way back when I was running a bank, when I was a permanent employee in a bank years ago. And I like aspects of it, and I like some of the things that the contextualizing the different roles were quite nice. But as I'm reflecting on it, I didn't hear any customer talk. I didn't hear any value stream talk. I didn't hear anything around about engaging wider with the organization in the delivery of goals. So for me, it's about how does tech structure itself, not how does an organization go agile. That's my thought.
Yeah, so you hit on kind of what I was thinking. One of the things I do really like about it is that it gives you different patterns for if you're working on a new product versus I'm supporting a legacy system. And they're very different. And in a lot of big companies, you have both of that. You have multiple different patterns going on at the same time. So I like that it gives you that. I also like the toolkit, although it's kind of double-edged on the toolkit. As a coach and someone with 25 plus years experience, I've built that toolkit over in my head and on notes, and now they're kind of giving it away to other people. So that's the part I don't like.
All right. What does everyone else think? Anyone used it? I have it in anger.
Sorry, Dominic, go ahead.
I'm a big fan of Disciplined Agile, and part of it is the choice aspect of it. Scrum literally says that if you don't do Scrum exactly as it's written, you're not doing Scrum. And Disciplined Agile is kind of the opposite of that. It allows you to pick and choose, including using Disciplined Agile in connection with SAFe, in connection with Scrum. So I'm a big fan of the choice that it gives you. Similar to Patrick, I've collected a lot of these practices myself over an entire career, and that they just bundle it up and give it away. So it also is, it is a great reference book. And one specific example, even though user stories aren't in the Scrum guide, it seems like every Scrum implementation uses user stories. And there are other requirements methodologies out there. So it always bugs me that everybody tries to fit every single requirement into a user story.
Yes.
Disciplined Agile gives multiple examples of what you can do that may be more appropriate for your situation.
Well said.
Several years ago, not strictly, but we were mainly inspired by the Disciplined Agile delivery. But back then, even though this person says it's not a framework, but more like a toolkit, Mark Lyons literally said to us that DAD is a process selection framework. So the choice element was really crucial there, of course, and that was really interesting as well. And the way it also described how you could grow from a more strict way of working to a more fluid way of working. And I still think that there's still a lot of valid things in what they're mentioning. More recently, I checked what they've written about DevOps as well, and it doesn't definitely make sense. Unfortunately, it's not as popular anymore.
All right, good discussion there.
You can visit.
Let's plow on. 3 down, 4 to go, and only half an hour, so we probably need to go a bit quicker.
One of the big success factors here at Spotify is our agile engineering culture. Culture tends to be invisible. We don't notice it because it's there all the time, kind of like the air we breathe. But if everyone understands the culture, we're more likely to be able to keep it and even strengthen it as we grow. So that's the purpose of this video. When our first music player was launched in 2008, we were pretty much a Scrum company. Scrum is a well-established agile development approach, and it gave us a nice team-based culture. However, a few years later, we had grown into a bunch of teams and found that some of the standard Scrum practices were actually getting in the way. So we decided to make all this optional. Rules are a good start, but then break them when needed. We decided that Agile matters more than Scrum, and Agile principles matter more than any specific practices. So we renamed the Scrum Master role to Agile Coach because we wanted servant leaders more than process masters. We also started using the term squad instead of Scrum team, and our key driving force became autonomy. So what is an autonomous squad? A squad is a small, cross-functional, self-organizing team, usually less than 8 people. They sit together and they have end-to-end responsibility for the stuff they build. Design, commit, deploy, maintenance, operations, the whole thing. Each squad has a long-term mission, such as make Spotify the best place to discover music, or internal stuff like infrastructure for A/B testing. Autonomy basically means that the squad decides what to build, how to build it, and how to work together while doing it. There are, of course, some boundaries to this, such as the squad mission, the overall product strategy for whatever area they are working on, and short-term goals that are renegotiated every quarter. Our office is optimized for collaboration. Here's a typical squad area. The squad members work closely together here with adjustable desks and easy access to each other's screens. They gather over here in the lounge for things like planning sessions and retrospectives. And back there is a huddle room for smaller meetings or just to get some quiet time. Almost all walls are whiteboards. So why is autonomy so important? Well, because it's motivating, and motivated people build better stuff. Also, autonomy makes us fast by letting decisions happen locally in the squad instead of via a bunch of managers and committees and stuff. It helps us minimize handoffs and waiting so we can scale without getting bogged down with dependencies and coordination. Although each squad has its own mission, they need to be aligned with product strategy, company priorities, and other squads. Basically, be a good citizen in the Spotify ecosystem. Spotify's overall mission is more important than any individual squad. So the key principle is really be autonomous, but don't sub-optimize. It's kind of like a jazz band. Although each musician is autonomous and plays his own instrument, they listen to each other and focus on the whole song together. That's how great music is created. So our goal is loosely coupled, but tightly aligned squads. We're not all there yet, but we experiment a lot with different ways of getting closer. In fact, that applies to most things in this video. This culture description is really a mix of what we are today and what we are trying to become in the future. Alignment and autonomy may seem like different ends of a scale, as in more autonomy equals less alignment. However, we think of it more like two different dimensions. Down here is low alignment and low autonomy, a micromanagement culture. No high-level purpose, just shut up and follow orders. Up here is high alignment, but still low autonomy. So leaders are good at communicating what problem needs to be solved, but they're also telling people how to solve it. High alignment and high autonomy means leaders focus on what problem to solve, but let the teams figure out how to solve it. What about down here then? Low alignment and high autonomy means teams do whatever they want and basically all run in different directions. Leaders are helpless and our product becomes a Frankenstein. We're trying hard to be up here, aligned autonomy. And we keep experimenting with different ways of doing that. So alignment enables autonomy. The stronger alignment we have, the more autonomy we can afford to grant. That means the leader's job is to communicate what problem needs to be solved and why. And the squads collaborate with each other to find the best solution.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Whoops. Do that. All right. So what do we think of that one? I'm going to reserve my opinion.
First of all, best soundtrack of all 3 or 4 videos.
Yeah. And it was shorter, so.
But a music company should have the best soundtrack.
So in my experience, because SAFe does tend to be prescriptive, and people that implement it do not necessarily have a lot of experience. I think they're being more prescriptive and lacking the autonomy that I feel is incredibly important to good product delivery. So it's not that with SAFe, you couldn't have that autonomy. You could. I mean, you could create value streams and you could, have your place and even your RTE while pushing as much of the decisions about how the work gets done, including design, down to the teams themselves. I just don't see it as you have to do this or you have to do that.
Okay.
I've
never been a big fan of this model, actually. Honestly, it isn't even a model. It's something that happened over evolution and it was never meant to be copied. But things really go wrong when large corporations like banks start applying this so-called model, and like it was described on a paper in a blog or something, or a PDF in 2013. So how people should ask themselves, are you still working the same way you were doing 8 years ago? And if not, why would you copy the way of working of a company from 8 years ago, knowing that it came over evolution and is still evolving?
Yeah, so my thoughts are, I love everything I just watched, and in part two, if you watch that again, it gets even better. I love everything I see here. The challenge I have is I'm going to put on my senior VP of a company hat here and said, okay, we're going to go implement Spotify. Where do I go find Spotify coaches and consultants, and how do I get people certified in Spotify and to learn? There's just there's no community, there's no support base for it other than a couple dozen YouTube videos. That's the first part of my first critique of it. That's really my only critique of it. I just don't see it as something that fits very large companies. If I were going to do a startup and I was going to build a culture, I would have people watching these videos.
There are other sources of building culture other than the Agile community and the frameworks, right? So there's the whole coaching world, the clean language world, the transformational coaching world. And I think that we have to look beyond the frameworks to really address behavior and culture. I haven't found good answers in the frameworks around that.
Yeah, that's a great point, but that would be another hour-and-a-half discussion. Plus.
Right, next one. Come on, let's.
This is good. All right, so this one's a short one. Enterprise Scrum. I guess you can see it. Enterprise Scrum.
What is Enterprise Scrum? Enterprise Scrum is an enterprise-level Scrum framework. It was developed by late Mike Beadle based on many years of experience he had in the trenches. So why Enterprise Scrum? Why not just use Scrum? Does Scrum Guide tell you how you can apply Scrum to more than one teams? No, it doesn't. It's very silent about that. So how do you apply Scrum to more than one teams? Enterprise Scrum will guide you how you can do that and many more. Basically, Enterprise Scrum fills in the gap Scrum Guide lacks. Now, can you easily introduce Scrum to non-software teams? Let's, for example, the term product owner. How do you introduce this to marketing or sales teams? What product do they develop? They don't. They are in the service business. So in Enterprise Scrum, we don't call it a product owner. We call it business owner. We don't call it a Scrum Master. Instead, we call it coach. We don't call it a product backlog. Instead, we call it a business value list. We don't call it sprint. Instead, we call it a cycle. Mike Beadle cleaned up the terms in Scrum so it can be easily introduced to non-software people. Now, transparency. One of the legs, and in my opinion, the most important leg of Scrum is transparency. Without it, we need a project coordinator to keep us informed of where we are at. In Scrum, we use a Scrum board to give us this transparency. Enterprise Scrum brings this transparency to the next level by introducing business model canvases. We have a variety of business model canvases that are ready for you to use depending on your needs. Your organization can leverage from the Enterprise Scrum business model canvas templates to keep abreast of important factors your organization must monitor to build and serve your customers. As I have shown you, Mike Beadle made Scrum general, scalable, and better for us to build a better future. If you'd like to learn more about Enterprise Scrum.
All right, Scott, why is this your favorite?
Oh, it wasn't me that said that, was Mao.
That was Mao. I thought that was Scott. Mao,
Maru.
where are you?
Maru, sorry. Yeah.
Maru.
You're gonna put me on the spot here on a video. It's gonna be on YouTube. Well, it's my favorite because
It's not like we're recording it or anything. Don't worry.
No, I don't mind. First of all, it's quite old. number two. So it carried with it the essence of the origins of the thinking behind Agile and the first versions of Scrum. Number three, it managed to do I don't know how martial artists do that stretch with their legs, when they have 180 degree between scaling, something that is quite technically defined, an empirical process, frameworks such as Scrum, but also embedding it in an enterprise context without sticking to whatever made Scrum successful or made Scrum useful or beneficial in a measurable way. That means in a smaller scale. That means it really provides concepts and metaphors and tools for people that work in the business without saying you got to work in Scrum mode yourself, without saying you got to work in a project mode or product mode or whatever, and many other things. So in that sense, it's very humble and really, how can I say, it just makes it easy to adopt Scrum in a much bigger scale.
Can I go in here? I've got some pros and cons on it. Everything you've said, I completely agree with, Maru. Mike was a genius, right? I've read the documents, the positioning documents around about what Scrum Scale is, and you can see his kind of physics background in it. I just love a lot of the thinking. If I was going to compare it to disciplined Agile, there's a lot more business focus in it than disciplined Agile. If I was to compare it to Scaled Scrum, well, they've just they've just simplified the language. I think if you look at the a lot of the APM stuff and things that have gone into SAFe lately, I think they've grabbed a lot of the enterprise Scrum stuff and pulled it into the portfolio space, because SAFe is a bit like a blob that pulls everything in. So business canvases and things, they're all in there. I think the problem I've got is finding the body of knowledge, finding the practitioner group. Even the enterprise Scrum book that's on Amazon didn't actually get published, so it's a bit shorter materials for me. That's where I land on it. The body of knowledge side. What does everyone else think?
Yeah, I don't have really much experience with it, Scott, other than my research on it, and that was my one question on the whole thing. I loved how he changed the vocabulary and gave it a business focus. But what's the future for this? The guy was tragically murdered in Chicago about 3 years ago. Just an act of random violence. But what's the future here? I really don't. It's not clear to me, and I couldn't find much evidence of that.
Anyone used it? All right, that's 10 past. Let's do the next one.
We'll move on. We got one more video.
Please contact me.
Stop.
Thank you.
All right, Les.
How are great products created? To develop a great small product, we'd sit together with our team and the customer, give them a new version every few minutes, and work together on the technology to solve their problems. You already know this is the best way to develop small products. But what usually happens with large product development? Typically, we get boring specifications from an internal department, then hand over our work to another internal department. We interact with managers instead of real customers, don't have much say in the process, don't have much effect on the whole product, and lack a sense of purpose. We might even believe we're doing Scrum or some other Agile methods, but our organization's inability to learn and adapt to reality will bite us sooner or later. What was better about small-scale development? Our approach was customer-centric. We saw the whole product at once. We had minimal process, and we had effective reality checks about the product and our way of working. It was natural. Is it possible to take what works so naturally in small-scale development and apply it to large-scale development? This question has driven Craig Larman and Bas Vare for over a decade. It's led to hundreds of experiments and the formulation of less. LESS is a simple framework for scaling agile development using these principles and some others. LESS has been used with groups of 12 people, hundreds of people, and thousands of people on products from banking to telecom, games to radar systems. How does LESS work? LESS is multi-team Scrum. There's one product owner providing vision and one adjustable prioritized list of customer-centric items, the product backlog. We want one integrated shippable product increment every sprint, every 1 to 4 weeks. Multiple teams develop this product one shared sprint at a time. Development is iterative and incremental. Each sprint starts with Sprint Planning 1, a short shared event where each team selects features from the top of the product backlog that they will implement during the sprint. That's followed by Sprint Planning 2, where the teams discuss their strategies for developing their features. During the sprint, each self-managing team develops the features they selected while collaborating and continuously integrating with the other teams on the potentially shippable product increment. Coordination outside the team is now a team responsibility, so there are no assigned coordinators. Halfway through the sprint, teams briefly pause the current sprint work for product backlog refinement, collaboration with customers and end users to clarify work for future sprints. By connecting teams to customers, we free up the product owner for vision and prioritization. We have one sprint review, a shared session where teams and customers explore what was done and determine the best next increment to develop. Each team retrospects to inspect and adapt its own way of working. We want teams to own their methods and processes, not rent them. Without ownership, there can be no continuous improvement. And in LESS, we don't stop with the team retrospectives. Teams, product owner, scrum masters, and management use the overall retrospective to explore the systemic and organizational obstacles that prevent higher value delivery. Use LESS to inspect and adapt the entire organization. Then, they repeat the whole cycle, experimenting and making wiser mistakes each time. When we have more than 8 teams, we do something similar called LESS Huge, still targeting one shippable product every sprint. So that's the LESS framework, just a few rules you can learn in a few minutes.
All right. So what are your thoughts on LESS?
I love that it's customer centric. The teams are definitely empowered to come up with the solutions. There is no extra external coordinators. The meetings, it's not all about the meetings. I'm a little concerned about the one shippable product across so many teams. Because I don't know, that to me seems a little scary. Like I've never seen that work really well. So what's the secret sauce there?
One trunk?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it, and they're good thoughts, and I don't have an answer to what connects it. I would suspect it's going to be, automation, development automation. But a couple of things I like about LESS, and one of the thing I like and I don't like. If we watch the video longer and you read more about LESS, LESS is really less about scaling and more about descaling. It's about delayering your organization and getting a flat organization. Only has a couple levels of hierarchy in the whole organization. And my experience with the corporate world is they really need to be in a whole lot of hurt and on the verge of bankruptcy unless they dramatically change to adopt something like that.
I agree.
They have a principle that everyone has job security for 2 years, but nobody has role security. So, you're expected to change. It's a very dramatic way of introducing change. I just don't know how palatable that would be to most large companies.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
They do have one pattern I really like. They have a pattern where, they have the same scrum master and product owner for 2 teams. so that they get to work together a lot. I like that pattern. I try to bring that into most of my coaching engagements where I can.
But if they have one product owner spread across 8 teams, and I didn't hear the part about huge, where it sounds like the product owner might be spread even thinner, you've turned the product owner into a bottleneck. And you've also given the development team carte blanche to go around them and misinterpret what the customer says and deliver whatever they feel like.
Now they scale the product owner role to where you have the product teams.
Oh, well, that's
similar.
not what they said in the video.
Oh,
What I've understood from someone who's advocating less is that there can only be one person owning the real product.
yeah. So just it's a semantics thing. The product owner is the king or the queen, and then there are a number of people underneath them that fulfill product functions that do that hands-on, kind of like what SAFe does with product owner, product manager. The implementation that I saw used that concept, but the title product owner was the final decision maker.
I think this is an opportunity for me to weigh in on product owner in general. I think the perfect product owner is like a unicorn where it doesn't exist, right? Because you need someone low enough in the organization where they can spend a lot of time with the agile teams, and yet high enough in the organization where they can make decisions that stick. And I just think finding that person, I don't know if I've ever seen one.
Well, it's not in large companies. In small companies, they're usually the entrepreneur.
Yeah, smaller companies absolutely can do it, and they're going to be descaled anyway. They're going to be smaller, more agile just by being smaller. But with the larger the company it gets, obviously the more management chain there is, and I just feel like the product owner always has to go back to somebody else or even multiple people to get bigger decisions made, and that just kind of hurts the agility.
Yeah, Rob England this morning in our second talk of the festival went into that a lot. Just how we really don't enable solutions anywhere. I think that would be applied to most of these solutions. Maybe not Spotify in the context of Spotify, but it was a very kind of laissez-faire kind of organization. Yeah. I don't know how you take Spotify into like a hybrid matrix organization that's highly regulated and still give people that level of autonomy. Can I just say something? Historically, I don't remember in my entire time in Agile anyone ever having a debate like this where we looked at all the methods at once. I think you've done a great job here, Pat.
Thank you, Scott.
If this doesn't get 1,000 hits in the archive, I'll be surprised. Also, it turned into a panel discussion, which I like as well. So yeah.
Well, the hard part on this was trying to put it together and comparing apples to apples, and we really weren't. I mean, they very different mindsets and approaches to the same set of problems. So that's kind of when we decided we'd turn it into a discussion.
All right, should we take it home? You've got some taxonomy stuff you wanted to mention.
But it won't work.
Just don't want to sound like we don't care about other people. There are some other frameworks out there. They just don't get a lot of usage anymore. So we listed a couple here.
Well, as Alistair said, 4 people used, crystal clear.
So based on this, we have a few recommendations. I'll cover the recommendations, and then Scott and I'll talk a little bit of the taxonomy, and Scott will bring it home. A couple of recommendations. One, the right framework depends on the nature of your organization. And that includes your culture, your customers, your market conditions, your risk tolerance, the size of your company, regulatory environment, transformation goals, a lot of different things. If you don't have a high tolerance for risk, don't do less. If you don't have a high tolerance for disruption, don't do less. If you want to increment your way in there, SAFe is probably a good choice. You want to dabble and experiment, look at Discipline Agile. Okay. So the point is, no framework is a perfect fit. You got to look at your organization and pick the one that best fits. The second one, and this is probably a little more controversial, I don't like agnostic approaches in large companies. I think you should pick a framework, any of them, and then modify it as you need it. Otherwise, you get into, I'm going to say, holy wars. You get into framework wars, which are of absolutely no value whatsoever. They're unproductive, and they just irritate everybody. The third one, again, might be a little controversial. You know, when in doubt, when you got 3 or 4 people arguing about something they don't know anything about, follow the framework. And then once you run it, you're going to realize it either worked or it didn't work. You're all going to learn at the same time, and then you make your adjustments to fit your organization. You know, number 4, mind your taxonomy. You know, how is your work structured? There's a difference between SAFE's taxonomy and the one we see in other models like Spotify, Scrum at Scale. And that's one of the problems when you go agnostic is, you know, Epic means something different. I'll talk about that in a minute. But mind your taxonomy. And the other part of it is make sure to fit your tools. I've been in companies where they're trying to use SAFE and they're using Jira out of the box and there's no feature in it. So make sure that they're in sync. Whatever framework and taxonomy you choose, make sure your tooling fits that. And then finally, build a glossary and maintain your glossary. Words mean things, and in Agile, the same word can mean multiple things. You know, the example, we see product owner, product manager. Product owner in SAFE is generally a lower person in the organization than a product owner in some of the other frameworks. Agile release train in Spotify is a bucket. It's a release bucket. You know, you're going to catch the next train if your code's not ready. In SAFE, it's a virtually delivery organization. So that's why the glossary is a good tool when you're starting out and you're going along. Doesn't have to be perfect day one. Build it as you go along. And here's a taxonomy problem I had with Scott and I had with a client. One area is using SAFE, one area is using Spotify, and they're teaching totally different vocabularies. What's an epic? Well, depends on which framework it is. And so you can see there's differences. Truth be told, it's fairly easy to reconcile. Just call them the same thing and make sure it fits your tool. All right, Scott, final thoughts.
All right. I wanted to end on this, and I just really wanted to underline it. Everything that's in any of the methodologies that we've got at the moment are all patterns. They've all developed over years. They've all added good stuff in them. They've all changed. I remember when I did the Kanban University study stuff, and half the stuff that they criticized Scrum for, they actually started putting in, like daily stand-up meetings, but they didn't call it a daily stand-up meeting. They call it a daily get-together or something. So I think there's a degree of convergence into some things. Jürgen said it really well. You know, he doesn't think anyone in any position of power looking at any of this stuff would choose any of them. Yeah. So the key thing here is we got practices. The good thing about our community is we evolve practices. We pick practices from everywhere. We take some lean ones in. We take some agile ones in. We take things from 100 years ago. Anything that works, we like to mix it up. As soon as you codify that into a large framework, it's static. It's dead, right? So really focus on the practices. Focus on developing the practices, and then look at the stuff that comes forward. I think there's space here for a better method than we've got out there. I really do, and that's where I land on this. I don't think the Agile community has done a good enough job on scaling. I think they spent too much time doing the holy wars with each other. I mean, again, I was talking a little bit about Ivor's talk earlier about his essentialization, but I do like the idea of that these are all just patterns, as Mike Beadle would have said. I did a lot of patterns work, and we need better patterns. That's kind of where I land. I think the whole Lean Agile community is a temporary thing, and eventually we're not going to need it. It's almost like it helps everyone transition away from where they were into the kind of new machine age that companies like Amazon and Tesla are in. I think that's where I land. We could do better.
I want to add something to what Scott said. My personal conclusion after 15 years is that as a community, we don't make that much progress. We're always driven by some frameworks and some groups and some islands because we are too dogmatic, I think. And I put myself in there too. Too absolutist, too ideologistic, and too dogmatic about these things. And a lot of the developers I talk to, I'm not talking about management or enterprises now, will tell you, so a lot means I don't know what percentage, but they'll tell you they hate Agile. And a lot of them will tell you they hate Scrum. And that's weird because it was defined for them. And by them, because the guys who did this were very, very capable senior software engineers, even though it was OOP and UML and design patterns and very experienced architects and people who really had a lot of knowledge. They were like gurus in their own way, but they each have their own style. Even now, talk to each one of them. You'll see. Talk to yeah, but I don't know. Tom Gilb, for example, he's his own universe. So one sentence.
Language.
Just one sentence to conclude. We would win at being less dogmatic and talk a lot more. Find like the last slide that Patrick did, the one before last with the taxonomy mapping. Even though it's very simple, that's a first entry point for people who want to, criticize that stuff. Even though it's just taxonomic and linguistic, but that's the beginning. That's what I wanted to say.
Good
Thanks.
point.
Thanks for Pat for pulling these slides together, and thanks for inviting me to help you. I just want to round up by saying this is the kind of talk that I want the festival to do. This is let's get some discussion, let's make some boundaries, let's make some friends, let's work out, and let's get that true discussion going. So I think this was a great talk. Thank you very much.
Fabulous, thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.